I'm the man in Dota 2. We can take it to the scrimmage, and you know that I be winning. Just give it 30 minutes, getting in the lane. Hey, yo, he's in that grows. I see him trying to kite, yeah, let's see just how far that goes. I carry in the score, boy, he's carried in the hearse. Your tier 2 towers and your rats getting murked. Demolished, we send my way from the start to the finish. Like I said in the beginning, I'm the man in Dota scrimmage.
I'd like to welcome you all to the inaugural episode of On the Flip Side. I'm here with David Parker, otherwise known as Godz. The intro you heard was from a guy named X Rags. He is actually part of the Flip Side squad, so you are actually going to see him a lot more with us, and you're going to hear his music as well. But without further ado, let me give you a brief explanation of what this is about. So here and On the Flip Side, we're going to have guests. Today it's Godz, and we're going to talk about things offline. Their start, their past, their present, their future. On the flip side of things, instead of talking about competitive Dota and like the things that got them to the platform in which they are now, we are going to actually just speak about their life and how they feel, their thoughts, and the road it took to get here today. So Godz, now I know a little bit about you because of the time that we spent at the LAN, but let's start at the very, very, very beginning. In particular, I would like to know, how did you get introduced to gaming?
I think I introduced myself to gaming mostly. Growing up, I never at any point owned a console. I didn't get a computer in my house until I was like 11 or 12 years old. So it was actually quite late before I started gaming. It was just one of those things like where it started off playing like your casual internet browser games, your flash games in school. I'd go home and want to play more games with them. I'd start by playing flash games, and I think it was just one of those things. I got drawn into the competitive aspect of it. I loved competing. I loved especially online against other gamers. Like I remember, I still remember vividly some memories of like when I was 13 or 14 playing online games against, back then what it would have been like 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I think it was in like Red Alert or something, and it was just like that whole aspect of being online against another guy rather than against the computer instantly kind of drew me in.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. Competition is the draw for a lot of us. Now, did you spend a lot of times in LAN cafes? Because I know Australia, that's like super popular. That's something that doesn't really happen here in the States.
Australia, it's quite big. I actually left Australia when I was 6 or 7 years old. So when I've been living in Australia, I would love going to LAN cafes. It was actually more after I graduated high school and I was living back in Australia. I'd spend time at LAN cafes. My closest group of friends in Perth, well, one of them was based around gaming, my Dota team, Team Joy. We'd just go to the LAN cafe once a week. We'd play games, compete in tournaments, and it was like some of my best memories as a competitive Dota player were actually on this small-scale LAN team. I mean, we were only competing against other Perth teams. You wouldn't have heard of a single one, but my best memories are there. Like I competed with like some of the N9 games. Like I played against Orange Esports. I'd actually beaten Orange Esports in a match, but that's like not the memories I remember. It's the memories with those guys on LAN playing in tournaments. I still remember like one of our biggest tournament wins against like the Perth rivals we had, and that to me is like the best win I've ever had. Like in Dota, not hey, we beat some internationally renowned team like Mineski or Orange Esports or whatever. Like to me, it's obviously those were less important tournaments. This was like a LAN tournament, so that was really cool. I think the other time where I got really into the LAN gaming was I was living in Singapore growing up when I was from 8th to 10th grade. So that was I think that was when I really got into gaming in Singapore. I had a group of friends who would go to the LAN cafes a lot. I'd go with them. We started playing Warcraft 3 custom games, and then eventually that moved on to Dota, of course. We also played a lot of Counter-Strike 1.6, which we're all pretty terrible at. But that kind of, I think, was where I started joining into the LAN gaming scene. And it's really, if you haven't experienced LAN gaming, you're missing out on like the best part of video games.
Yeah. How were you introduced to Dota? Well, I'm assuming you were introduced to Warcraft 3 first and then moved on, right?
It started with Warcraft 3, just literally playing tower defenses. We'd go, like, my friends in Singapore who obviously been playing Warcraft 3 custom games for a while would just go to a LAN cafe and would play tower defense games. Not just tower defense, we'd play some tower defense, we'd play some Footman Frenzy, like all these just random Warcraft 3 spin-off custom games. I didn't start playing Dota right away. It wasn't my direct group of friends didn't play a lot of Dota, but I actually played Warcraft 3 Melee, like not professionally, but I was like I was like a high tier player. Like you have your high tier low players in Dota 2, whatever it is, your high tier matchmaking. I was one of those for Warcraft 3. Like I was very good. I was young. I wasn't good enough to be professional. Maybe I could have if I put more time or cared. But to me, it was just something I loved competing and wanted to improve. And I kept improving. I got fairly decent. I just loved the fact that in Warcraft 3 there was an actual rankings as well. Like you could follow your progression as you moved up and got a higher and higher rank. Which is something which Dota 2 kind of severely lacks at the moment. But eventually, I think I was actually playing Footman Frenzy a lot. I was actually like there was a small competitive scene for Footman Frenzy, which is kind of like Warcraft 3 got a bit stale, got a bit boring at times. So I'm just Footman Frenzy to me was just a more interesting game. Like you had your army, you had your hero. There was a lot more. I don't know about interesting, but it was just a lot. Like every game seemed a bit more different. Whereas Warcraft 3 was very repetitive. You do the same build over and over again.
Yeah. Maybe
it's a slightly different map. So you take ultimately after like 8 or 9 years of competitive Warcraft 3 Melee, all the game came down to like 90% of the game was just your creep route, like which neutral camp to the next you'd go to with your hero. So that got a bit boring for me. I played Footman Frenzy, and my team of Footman Frenzy players just eventually moved on to Dota. So it was like, okay, we're gonna start playing Dota. I remember we had this big animosity towards Dota, like, oh, Dota's such a newbie game, or it's so boring. Why would you want to play Dota? And my first few games, I was like, this game isn't that good. Like, I don't get what the deal is. Why is it so popular? But eventually, I just kept playing a few games here and there and got hooked in. Like so many people have, either Dota 1 or now with Dota 2 coming out, so many people just get instantly hooked. And I think that's what happened with me.
Yeah, especially when you stop doing well. Like, if you can stomp people pretty easily, the game gets boring. But when you start to meet resistance, that always just if you're competitive, it's like that. I don't know, you just can't stop. And then before you know it, you've played 10 games in a day and you're like, what just happened? Now, I want some transparency here, though, and you got to be honest with me. Did it hinder your grades at all in school, or were your parents just not having that shit? Like, were they just not, they wouldn't let that happen?
It hindered my grades, but I guess not to an extent that it mattered. There were times where I was really far behind as far as actually not doing the work.
Yeah.
I found that I would literally stay up all night. I mean, so you hear this from so many current professional gamers, casters, whatever. When they were gaming as a child, they would stay up all night, sleep during classes. Whoever you ask, whether it's tasteless, whether it's a pro gamer, I was the same. Except that started happening with me much later in life because I got a laptop when I was in, I think, 9th grade. So it definitely hindered my grades somewhat, but I was also smart enough that I could just get by wing school. I ended up getting good enough results I was going to be doing biomedicine at Melbourne University, the best university in Australia. So it was like pre-med, but I didn't continue that path. But I think the main thing, it created a lot of this tension amongst my family at first growing up. Like before I was serious about gaming, when I was just gaming as a kid, it's like, okay, the number of times my laptop got confiscated from me because I was like playing from when I was meant to be asleep till 5 or 6 in the morning. I had my laptop. I would play I'd have my covers up, thinking my parents couldn't see me. Obviously, laptop, bright LED screen, you can see it from outside relatively freaking easy. So I wasn't the smartest. Then what they started doing is with the internet, like they'd make it so that the internet goes off from like midnight till 6 or 7 a.m. So I couldn't actually.
They got slick.
That was their next trick. That took me.
That was before parental controls too, bro. Your parents, no joke.
My dad he's pretty tech savvy, but I very quickly figured out. I knew like the website to go to log into your internet settings and all that, and like what I did was I reset the password, and then just went in and just initially I would just turn the little internet control off, and then just keep playing. But then he obviously figured out very fast because he'd be like, wait a second, why is the internet thing on? Like, what happened? This isn't right. I don't think he ever actually like confronted me about it. I think it was just one of those things where he's like, he's
God damn,
outsmarted.
he's smart. You know what? I'll give him that one. Yeah, wow, that's
So
actually pretty cool.
with that, no, that was actually before I reset the password. That was just when I was the default password, so I figured out. Then he reset it. He made a new password, which I didn't know. So I had to go in, reset the password. I like, you push the reset button on the modem, and it goes back to the default password. And then I set up the internet control myself because I didn't want to, because when you reset it, I think it restored the internet control. So I'm like, oh, I'll put it back there so he's not suspicious. So I put it back there, and every night I would turn it off, and as soon as I finished playing, I'd turn it back on. And I did that for like a good year. I think eventually he figured out, or eventually he caught on and maybe did something to stop me doing it. But I spent a lot of time battling with my parents for just to play one more game of Dota, or just to play one more game of Footman Frenzy.
You know, it's interesting because I'm gonna ask you about this later on. You and me spoke about this personally at the RIT event because I was asking you, like, how supportive were your parents when you decided to be a full-time caster? But let's talk first about, how did you end up getting into casting? Did you start casting Dota 1?
Yeah, Dota 1. It was after I moved back to Australia. I graduated high school in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to Australia. I was studying at university there. I had a ton of free time, mostly because I was blowing off classes, whereas in high school, you're at high school, you can't do shit with your free time. You're there 5 days a week from 8 o'clock till 4 o'clock or whatever it may be. So I had a ton of free time. I was playing a lot of Dota. I was trying to do something with competitively, but obviously being from Australia, there's nowhere to really go. So I was playing competitively, especially back in Dota 1. Dota 1, the only competition you could maybe dream of attending was SMM, and just getting sponsors for that and getting over there was
really difficult.
Yeah, it was very difficult. Our team actually qualified for SMM. It was kind of cool, but we ended up not being able to go, which was probably one of the more disappointing moments of my esports career. But yeah, to answer your question, getting into commentating just happened kind of one day. It was, I think there was, because we had in the Australian Dota community, there's a site, like a site and community called Board Aussies. It was basically, because Battle.net didn't have Australian servers, so some guy just hosted his own Australian Battle.net server, basically, called Board Aussies, which had the entire Australian community. We had tournaments on there, we had in-house leagues for Dota. It was really just a big Australian community, and they had regular tournaments, and we didn't have, that was back when everything was on one TV, but there weren't actual commentators. Like, there was commentators for the big international events. You had Matt Mordigan casting some events, you had Toby casting some events. I'm like, I wonder if I could just start casting these Australian tournaments. No one's really casting them. May as well try and commentate them, or at least stream them. And that was
same strategy you ended up using with Southeast Asia.
Yeah. Yeah, for a lot of that. It wasn't so much as a strategy. I think it was more just a...
Oh, it's brilliant, though.
It was made very easy. That was when XSplit was just sort of coming out and becoming a thing.
Yeah.
The main problem, like, you go back 3-4 years ago with why weren't there more people streaming Dota 2, their games and stuff.
Yeah.
The two big reasons is there was no XSplit and there was no Twitch TV or OWN TV. And, obviously, OWN TV went down in flames, but they were comparable at their prime. XSplit makes it so anyone who doesn't know anything about technology or computers can figure out how to stream. It's the software made easy. It's very clunky. It has a lot of problems, which you'll hear people bitching about at the time, but it's easy to understand and makes it so anyone can stream, which is why so many pros nowadays stream. The other one, Twitch and OWN TV provide a website where anyone can stream too, and also people can monetize. I mean, I didn't monetize my streaming for, I don't know how long, good 8 or 9 months after I started casting, so it wasn't so much about the monetization with Twitch TV, it was just the fact that they made it easy to stream to their website. So it was literally just, okay, it's easier to do because of XSplit and Twitch, and I can do it. Like, why not? I was kind of interested in casting. I just loved Dota, and I thought I could offer a lot of insight because I've been playing for so long. So I just thought, why the fuck not?
Who was now? Were you main casting at that time, or were you co-casting at that time? Since you were playing competitively, so technically you would obviously have.
I was main casting. I was just solo casting everything. There was
solo casting. Okay.
there was no casters in the Australian scene. Like,
do you prefer solo over with a caster, or do you like having a tandem? Actually,
I like having. I mean, I think to be good, the best product for the viewers is having more than one caster every single time. But I enjoy solo casting. I think solo casting is far more difficult.
Yes,
and some which one of the best casters in a pair can be one of the worst solo casters. At the same time, you have a fantastic solo caster who's not very good in a pair. So it's basically like a completely different talent solo casting. I mean, obviously any main caster who can cast Enduro can solo cast, but it's very different. It's very hard for the viewers because they're stuck listening to the same person over and over again. But solo casting is kind of where I started off. Like the first year or so, I was just almost only solo casting. Like I casted a couple of games here and there with Purd, but he was probably the main person I started co-casting with semi-regularly. But even so, I was doing a ton of solo casting. Started off in Australia because casting wasn't a thing, and it was one of those things where you're starting off, you didn't even think about the fact, you're meant to be a co-caster. Even Toby was doing mostly solo casting. He was solo casting for the longest time, and that's because everyone was solo casting. It was just what you did. It was the way Dota casting actually started out, that you didn't have a co-caster until people were like, hold on a second, Syndrome with Toby's like the best combo ever. We need co-casters, and then everyone started having co-casters. So that kind of evolved. But I started solo casting Australian and then moved to the Southeast Asian one. It was actually Gigabyte who gave me my first real big breakthrough as a caster with the GST and Dota 1 tournament they do. That was kind of where I started seeing myself more as not a full-time caster immediately, but at least as something which can make me some money, which, I mean, it's not all about money, but at the end of the day, my parents, as soon as I left school, weren't going to keep paying my bills.
Absolutely, which is a good segue into my next. So when you started to take this really seriously, now, I kind of already know this, but it's for everybody else.
Really seriously.
Well, when you knew that this was a thing that you actually enjoyed, and when you realized your passion for it, how supportive was your parent, or how supportive were your parents about the prospect of you actually doing this at a full-time basis, or on a full-time basis, actually?
My parents at this day are incredibly supportive and happy for me to keep on doing this, and as long as it's even if it's, I mean, as long as I'm sustaining myself and happy, they're really supportive. I think initially it was more something like I put them in an awkward position where I hid a lot of information for them. Like the first LAN tournament I went to actually commentate at was in 2011 in Thailand. There was a tournament called ESTC. I didn't actually tell them I was going to Thailand, so my parents live in the US. They live in Houston, Texas, and they found out that I was in Thailand like through a friend or something, and they freaked out because I'm in Thailand. They had no idea what I was doing in Thailand. My family's really close. For them, like not knowing something like that was just like a huge, I guess, just I don't know. It was just a sign that there was no trust, and it was just something. It wasn't like I guess it wasn't a good moment as far as our whole family and relationship went again, but. That was when they really started getting more curious and started asking a lot more questions about what I do. Because I think up until that moment, they thought it was just a hobby with no real future in mind. It was just wasting my time. Yeah. So from that moment, they started thinking, okay, what is it you're doing? Is it actually a paid thing? Like, what's going on? That tournament I didn't actually get paid for, but I think I'd also been doubted. Like, also getting paid for it. And I'm like, not really. I'm in Thailand. They paid for my accommodation. I paid for half my flight, so I was out of pocket. But it was probably the best decision of my commentating career.
Oh, absolutely, because you were hooked after that, right? Like that's when you knew that's what you wanted to do, or was that not the moment yet?
It was definitely the moment I fell in love with commentating at live events.
And that was your first time doing anything like that in terms of public speaking at that, on that type of level, right? Was that the first time that you ever
it wasn't actually commentating to the live audience.
Oh, okay.
It was still just online, but it was being at the event, being seen as like a commentator, even if I wasn't being broadcast over the PA system. There was a ton of background noise, there was a ton of hype. I talked to a few of the teams, the players. That was where like Origin Esports back then. That was when I actually first met Winter and talked to him, which is kind of funny. Like we didn't talk a lot, we didn't become friends or anything, but it was like I just met awesome people. I still remember meeting the Team Zenith guys. I don't think they were playing under the name Team Zenith back then. There was Team Aeon, whoever they were. I remember meeting Ice Tammy Furryfish, who was kind of like their, I don't know, she wasn't their manager at the time, but she was playing with Team Asterix. I mean, I'm just like, wow, these are just really cool people who love video games. And that was kind of where I'm like, okay, I want to do this. At the same time, it was a huge, just lucky moment of my career, because that kind of being there and being seen as like a caster in the scene, just, that led to so many more opportunities. That was actually before I started casting for Gigabyte. So, and that's kind of what led me on towards doing an event with Gigabyte. They contacted me, and then in the future, when Dota 2 came out, I contacted them and said, hey, you should do a Dota 2 tournament. There's always interested viewers that make sponsor big Dota 2 tournaments. So much.
It's so funny you say that, because
by chance.
Isn't it amazing how like this thing's a giant fraternity? Like, remember, I haven't really been this type of avid gamer for very long, especially not as long as you. But the interesting thing is, so even in Europe, it's amazing. Like I could give you an example, right? So you obviously know one of our players, Mania. Him and I have conversations all the time, like, you know, in MYM playing with Loda and Ake, and then playing with Malk, and like, you know, we share stories, we talk about life and stuff, but sometimes he brings up like, you know, I remember this happened, and like that's when I learned this. And for me, it's almost like these types of scenarios are scenarios I have with my personal real life friends. Do you remember back in, you know, 8th grade, you know, back in high school? And it's so crazy how you guys, a lot of you, well, you in the Australian scene, European players, you guys have literally known each other for almost 10 years at this point. Isn't that like so amazing how like how close knit honestly the Dota 2 scene is? And like the more I hear these stories, the more I'm like, wow, it's so crazy that who would have, did you ever expect that, right? Like I don't know, at least 5 years from now, well, from then, that you and Winter would collab on things in Beyond the Summit? Right? Isn't that to me, that's, I still hear these stories and I think it's like, holy shit, that is the craziest thing. Because if you were writing a script for a movie, I don't even think that would be plausible.
It's weird because I don't think, I mean, it definitely like has that fraternity feel where you've known each other so long. I think it also has its bad sides where it's really hard to sort of, as a newcomer, even if you're incredibly
talented, completely agree,
to get to know people, get connections.
It's so difficult.
It's so hard. It's so hard to get seen. But as far as like when I had no idea where I'd be here at any point in my career. I think I just took it step by step. I never had this end game goal. Even today, with Beyond the Summit, we focus more short term, which is one of, I guess, our shortcomings at times, because we want to make sure that our day-to-day content's best. We don't think, okay, 2-3 years from now, how is Beyond the Summit going to be amazing and awesome? But we just think, how is it going to be better tomorrow? Which is fine. We're doing something better each and every day, but we're not focusing, I guess, big and long term at times. But it's I don't know. It just kind of happened that I ended up here. I don't even know how. I'm looking back at somehow trying to piece it together myself. I'm like, wait a second. I never, like, even when I came up with the name, I didn't even come up with the name Beyond the Summit. My friend Godz did. He came up with the name Beyond the Summit. That was some time ago. Like, it was never meant to be like, oh, Beyond the Summit's going to be a big casting organization, casting agent tournament. It's just like, Beyond the Summit's a cool, catchy name. I like this. We were trying to think of a cool name. We wanted to do a tournament together. Like, we've done. He'd been organising a couple Australian tournaments, and he was just like, yeah, we should do more tournaments. And I was like, we need to do something bigger. I reckon Gigabyte will sponsor something. Like, we should do something with the top Chinese teams as well as some Australian teams. And that was the Gigabyte Dota Masters. And yeah, we chose Beyond the Summit because it's a catchy name. And even after the success of that tournament, I never thought, okay, Beyond the Summit's going to be a full-time thing, which I think is different because some people do actually plan it out. That's actually one of the cool things where I started casting at Ghosty Gamers with Perch. Purge is complete opposite to me.
Yes.
When he came into Dota 2 casting, he was like, he had the entire business model laid out. He knew what he wanted to do. He's like, okay, these guys in StarCraft 2, be it Husky, be it Day 9, they have their daily shows. Or in Day 9's case, but in Husky's case, it's like, okay, he has his YouTube content. That's what Purge wanted to do. He's like, okay, I'm going to do the same model for Dota 2, because Dota 2 is going to be popular.
Absolutely.
Similar to StarCraft 2, or right now more popular than StarCraft 2. So he's like, okay, I'm going to make guides, I'm going to make daily content, I'm going to make myself into a YouTube personality, and he did that. He was really smart about it too, because he commentated as well, so that was kind of how he brought more attention to his YouTube by uploading some live games. He doesn't even, I mean, he obviously wants to commentate here and there, but I don't think he wants it to be just a small thing on the side, like Husky, where he'll cast an MLG every now and then. But from the very start, he had a business model. He knew that he was trying to make it something sustainable as a full-time job. For me, I mean, I didn't even think about getting paid at any point really until I would say maybe 6 months ago. That it was only maybe 6 months ago. It was like, okay, Beyond the Summit. I didn't ever consider Beyond the Summit my full-time job until maybe 6 months ago. Until I left. I was actually living and working in Thailand in 2012 or 2011. Until I left then. It was basically after the international tour, because I went from Thailand to the international tour.
Yeah, you guys blew up.
Where I worked there.
At TI2.
Yeah, and that was when Dota 2 got really banned. It was directly after TI2 where I thought, okay, I'm going to make Beyond the Summit my full-time thing.
Yeah, well, I remember your Kickstarter, and like that's when like we were all like, oh man, like I hope they do well, because you know it took a lot of balls to do what you did on a lot of levels. But I think the biggest, most inspiring thing about that was, at least for me, right? It's certain people do things the right way, and it's kind of nice that these kind of quiet, you know, approachable guys who weren't really sure if people were gonna like them or be successful got the overwhelming response. Like you hit what, 25 in a day or so?
Yeah, it was.
That was outrageous.
Yeah, like 30 hours or something.
Unbelievable.
I think the coolest thing that come from, I mean, it's great that we managed to set up our studio because of the Kickstarter and all that, and make this amazing thing that we're doing in LA. But it's just a cool story for the Dota 2 community as a whole. Like, I spoke to a guy yesterday who works in marketing strategy. He's like, whenever he talks about Dota 2 to his friends and about how it's legit, he's like, I talk about your guys' Kickstarter. He says, I tell my friends that Dota 2 did a Kickstarter and it was $25,000 funded in 30 hours. That's how I tell my friends. That's how I tell my friends when I tell them that Dota 2 is legit. And I'm just like, that's a really cool thing.
Well, it's why
it just
Valve
proves that the Dota 2 scene is serious.
Absolutely, it's why Valve and Microsoft are hiring economists, because I'm sure you've heard of Zynga, correct? They had a meteoric rise when they started this whole free-to-play model, and it got to a point where their market share was bigger than EA Sports in terms of like stock prices and all this stuff. I'm an economics major like David, so like this is kind of my forte. Well, the interesting thing about this is, so in modern economics, right, there's a joke that we're all Keynesians, but according to that specific economic model, altruism throws a wrench into the whole thing. It doesn't exist. But the most incredible thing about what's going on in the internet, right, is things like workshop creation, Kickstarters, casters, you know, all this stuff. You can make money. There are places to make YouTube. Like, it's unbelievable the amount of support you can get. Like, there's even an S2 caster. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the name Maximus Black. He basically lives on donations. And he does pretty well for himself. It's altruism isn't really supposed to exist like this, but it is. And it's why these big companies now are beginning to try to figure out exactly, right, like not only the reasons why, but the monetary value, you know, in this. And you basically proved it. Like, you guys proved it. So like, we were all very happy. Even
to this day, the TI3 proves it. Like, you look at how much the prize pool's risen just because of the community.
Yeah.
I think, and it's kind of cool because the way Valve pitched it isn't that it's not that it's a Kickstarter, it's that you're buying a compendium. Like, for me, if it was like, here, donate $10 and $2.50 goes to prize pool. I wouldn't have donated. Not because I don't support Valve or the teams, just because I would just say, oh, it's okay, I don't need to. The prize pool, there's already a prize pool there, but because you get a compendium, you're like, oh, sweet, you get a compendium, you're really involved with the event.
Yeah.
You get everything that goes with. Obviously, if you compare it to anything else in the store, it's amazing value. Like, you get this 100-day battle bonus or whatever it is, just alone for that. But it's just, yeah, it's Valve's really figured a way to sort of connect the consumer with I guess just bypass that middleman. They basically connect the consumers, the people who watch Dota 2, who love Dota 2, with the people who are adding value to the Dota 2 scene, which is the players, casters, everyone else. Like, they're just trying to. I mean, I guess the main problem a lot of the time right now with the casters and everything else is that it's all ad revenue based. Because pro players who stream, they rely on ad revenue from Twitch, from YouTube. Similar thing for casters, which is kind of what Valve doesn't want to destroy that. They just don't want to make it the core source of revenue.
Yes, because it's unreliable and it's very risky. But the thing is, so like we're kind of skipping here because I wanted to go back and talk to you about TI2 in general. But the interesting thing about all this, right? Like the subplot is Valve didn't actually. They created a system with Steam that allowed you to create content. They didn't have to hire staff to create more content. They ended up using community members to create content, and those community members are now living off the content created for the Dota 2 community. That thing to me was that's ingenious. That was just incredible. It's an incredible way to not only market the game, but get the community behind it as well, because everybody likes aesthetics. I truly believe that Dota 2 is like the perfect storm for esports right now, because it does a little bit of what StarCraft can't, which is bringing that type of community, like family and community together, where we all support each other's products, right? So Nooksy, for instance, she creates an item, but guess what? There's thousands and thousands of people that vote on that item. Hey man, I like your item. That's awesome. Keep doing what you're doing, right? So then she makes more items, and so that whole stuff is phenomenal. But let's get back to TI2. So walk me through what it was like going through TI2. So when did Valve get in touch with you in particular about TI2?
For me, the most special thing about TI2 was as an analyst, being there on the panel, is that we arrived nice and early. We arrived when the players arrived, so we kind of shared the entire journey with the players from start to finish. We were there the day we were showing around with them when they were showing around the Valve offices, so we got to see just the work environment Valve was in. We saw like the setup for where the group stages were complete, which is just sort of random rooms here and there around the Valve offices. They had, I think it was 2 days of practice and warm up to get used to the time zone, so there was no jet lag or whatever, as well as just get used to the setup there. I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2 days, but then we were there for the group stage. So every day of the group stage, we were there. We were in theory rehearsing, which we were doing. We were going through what we were going to be doing on the panel. We were rehearsing, using the equipment, and just getting comfortable, making sure everything is okay with the production. But at the same time, just being there with the players, seeing how they do, we didn't get to actually watch a whole lot of the group. Not many people watched all that many of the group stage matches because there were so many on at once. But it was just amazing being at the Valve offices with the players there. Then having the player dinner, like that was one of the things which I feel just completely blessed that we got to be there for the player dinner. Whereas I feel bad that some of the other casters couldn't. Like I talked to LB and he's like, man, we got to do all this cool shit. I had to, and he's jealous of me. Like he got to cast all these amazing games. He's like, you got to be there with the players, have dinner with them and stuff, and just generally have an awesome time.
Any funny stories? Like, is there a good story? Like, is there like a really funny story that you have? Say it. What's going on?
I think
was there like a really funny story?
The funniest part at the player dinner was playing some Danish drinking game with Cinder. I don't know what the drinking game was, but it was definitely one of the highlights. I think the funniest story though is the Navi guys and some of the Chinese players just sitting around the table and playing this weird drinking game as well. It was all Asian. The Navi guys they will fit in with anyone though. Like Havos is one of the friendliest, nicest guys you'll ever meet. He's an amazing, and it was just really funny seeing how they just mingle within each other, and just they don't. Everyone's just a Dota 2 player. They just love the game, and just. I don't know,
Were you any there for those epic ping pong matches? Like, did you get to watch the
ping on Skype, man?
Oh wow! I'm sorry. Uh-oh.
I don't know. I think it's probably my connection here in Australia.
No bueno.
I can't understand you too well.
Uh-oh. No, my question for you was, were you around for any of the epic ping pong matches that went on in the Valve office?
I saw bits and pieces of one or two. I saw Denny play. It's funny. It's great seeing Denny play ping pong because he was so bad at it. Oh, it's great seeing someone who's just so amazingly talented at Dota 2 and just like worshipped worldwide, and like, this guy sucks at ping pong. I could beat him at ping pong. I think that was why I loved watching Denny play ping pong, thinking that, hey, I'm better than this guy at ping pong. That's something.
So, what is your favorite moment of TI2? Whether it was on the panel, off the panel, during the prelims, whenever. Do you have like a favorite moment?
I think my favorite moment would be, I think it'd be before the whole event began. Before even going to the Valve offices, with the Australian team N9, just being a part of their boot camp, being there as their manager. Something about just watching them train and try put everything into doing the best they could. There was obviously problems with the roster. They didn't stay around much long after, but seeing them try and make it work, and just seeing the ups and downs of a team, even a team who has its problems, is just something so incredible. And it was probably the biggest challenge for me also, was just trying my best to not so much just keep everything together, but at least help give them the best shot of winning, like, whether it's just ease up the tension between players, put them in the right direction, make sure they're focusing on the right things, and try and put them in a mindset where they could actually. I don't think anyone saw them. I mean, I say anyone. Obviously, the community didn't think they were a top team, but I know they weren't expecting to get top 3, top 4, but they definitely had it in their mind once they started playing that, hey, we can actually get top 8. They firmly believed that. I believed it as well, and to this very day, I think they had what it takes to get top 8, and they just didn't. They didn't play on the day, but they had some great games. Like I think that's what I think was, for me, the best part, is being my most memorable moment is being there with those guys, and then when they had their group matches, like they took a game off Zenith in the group stage, they beat EG 2-0. Like, people talk about how the American teams play well. They're like, well, you want to shit on this Australian team for being a useless team? These guys 2-0'd EG at the group stage. I'm like,
yeah,
they were every team there had some potential and had the ability to cause upsets and play well. And I think N9, like, they have a special place in my heart, because it's where I started. It's where I played competitively for a while, and it's where I just put a lot of my belief as a gamer, as a manager, and I learn a lot from them. So that's probably what I love most about TI2.
I'm actually glad you said that, because I feel like managers don't get enough credit in the scene. I mean, everybody is probably familiar with like Paz or Charlie, but like we have like our manager Samo is incredible, and the things that he does with the team, nobody would ever guess, or people don't realize how instrumental these managers are to their players. Maybe some not so much, but I was around Chappie back in the Fire days when they got kicked out of that game replays tournament, and then got signed by Complexity, and then going to TI3 because I'm really cool with Cap, so we chill with them a few days before and stuff, and like just watching them, like everything he did for them, which we're not going to get into the specifics of what happened with that team and all that stuff, but I mean, looking back, right, like there's so many people that did so much for their teams, and it's kind of a shame that they don't get the right due. But the people that know, especially those players, they will always be like, you know, that guy was so important to us. And so, like, I'm glad you said that, like, as a manager, that was like your coolest moment, because I feel like a lot of managers really don't get the credit that they're due, but I see it, and I've seen it So to me, it's always been really like they are an unofficial 6-man, and I've always felt that way.
I mean, it's one of those things, and it's like the core of your job as a manager is it's basically to do whatever it takes to get your team the best results and make sure they're being treated fairly. And like you get into like honestly, the number of arguments and stuff I've had as a player, it just doesn't compare to being a manager. I mean, you have to fight for your team,
especially for server issues, right?
Yeah, I mean, be it server issues, be it whatever. It's not even always arguments. Like I just remember like being in Malaysia at the Asia for a LAN tournament as their manager. And it's one of those things. The players are shy. Like the admins tell them something, they'll just accept it, or they'll just say okay. They don't realize that they're being hard done by. Like there had been rules about what happens if there's a 3-way tie, about how it uses the time rating, and they wanted to change it mid before our last match. They wanted to change the rule for time rating. I'm just like, wait a second, this isn't right. Meanwhile, like Godz comes to me and said, "Oh, by the way, this is the new time rating rule." I'm like, wait a second, how is this the new time rating rule? Like, how did this suddenly change? Like, after we got told the rules at the start of the day, how is it now a different rule when we have it in writing? We've been told something. This is confirmed, and then I go over and like Godz like, "Oh, it was just the admin. Like he was talking with me, HY from UFC, and then like LGD Zhao. Like these two guys, like Zhao and HY, like we just talked." They weren't doing anything wrong. I'm not trying to slander them in any way whatsoever. These are great guys, but I just remember it was like they were actually asking the admin like, "What's the time rating rule?" And I think the admin they were talking to like wasn't entirely clear himself, so they were like, "Oh, is it this?" And then the admin's like, "Yeah, okay, it can be that." And I remember going over there and having to just argue my case against HY. So HY is trying to argue his case for the change of the rule, while I'm trying to argue my case. Like, you can't change the rule mid-tournament. So it was just a really funny moment of like having to make sure I do anything for my team. Like HY is one of those guys I respect so much, and like at various points we're not friends. So it was just funny that you have to argue with people you like as a manager.
Yeah.
In the end, we settled on doing tiebreakers, which was actually ideal because it was like, okay, well, if you do tiebreakers, then it's like the best team goes forward. So then no one can really argue with that. They didn't want to do tiebreakers because of time restrictions, but they got in such a fucking pickle. They're like, okay, we'll do tiebreakers because we don't want to piss anyone off. But
so let's talk about after TI2.
Managers don't get enough. Yeah, like you say, managers deserve a lot more. For what
I mean, we could have a whole show about this because I feel like, even in terms of salary, I feel like they should be players. But that's something that we can discuss some other time. So after TI2, explain to me what happened after the monumental tournament that you guys had, and especially the panel. Everyone, even Nebula, blew up. Just explain that to us. Like, what was it like the day after? Like, was your Skype filled with messages? Like, what was it like?
The day after the first day, or the day after?
No. The day after the tournament. The day after the tournament. Like, did that honestly change your life? Did the notoriety you received from that tournament change your life?
I don't think, as a caster, the tournament changed my life. Not to say it's definitely the biggest. It's what every team player and casters looks forward to. But I don't think it's something like TI2 ended, and then the next day it's like, okay, I have all these people reaching out to me who want. It's not something like, okay, I have all this added fame or added contacts. It wasn't like, okay, now I'm set. Dota 2's big. It was the day after TI2. It was more like, okay, TI2 was awesome. I want to keep being. It was basically more for me a personal realization that I wanted to commentate more and be more involved with esports. I think. And so for me, the day after TI2 wasn't having like you say, a bunch of messages on Skype. I mean, I had a bunch of messages on Skype. Hey, great job. Like you were amazing there, or whatever it was, or just supportive, constructive criticism from friends. But directly after TI2 was more like that was more when I started to think about Beyond the Summit and try to flesh out how we make Beyond the Summit a long-term goal. How we make it that was when LD and I sat down and said, we need a studio. We want to have a studio. Where are we going to do it? How are we going to do this? Let's start brainstorming. Let's figure out how we can do this, how we can move forward, and how we can just do something awesome for the community. I think the biggest realization that came out from TI2 was that the Dota 2 community is really fucking cool. All our viewers, you go on, whether it's Join Dota, Reddit, whatever community you're at, you're like, these guys are really awesome. Like, we want to do awesome content for them. Like, they reply with just such great feedback. They're so receptive to it all, and they bring in their friends to keep playing. So we're like, okay, we want to keep doing this. And I guess the post TI2 thing was just more about just moving forward ourselves rather than having a bunch of people coming to us. Like, it wasn't even after TI2, nothing came easy. So
when did you form the team with Lumi and some of the other guys that is it Kiwi? Is it Kiwi Kawi? Who's your production guy? Who's your main production guy? Kawa, excuse me. Wow. When did you start to form the team? After the initial preliminary discussions with David, when did you start to build your roster?
Lumi had been casting with LD for some time, so he wasn't like a part of Beyond the Summit, I guess, but he was like the tournament we'd done before the international. He cast with LD. He was definitely sort of like a regular caster we had on there, or co-caster. So I think the pieces just kind of fell together. I guess everything kind of fell together around the Kickstarter. Kawa was actually casting for ESL. He was in Germany casting for them. But we'd known. We weren't close friends, but we talked to him. We've been supportive of each other, especially we were really happy when we found out he was going to be casting in Germany for ESL, although it ended up not working out too much for him there. But when he came back, we knew he was pretty passionate about what he does about gaming and had some serious talent. So we just said, hey man, come out, help learn what we do. And it was kind of it started off, I guess, as a trial thing where he was there for the TI3 qualifiers, really, and then after that it's like, okay, we like you, stick around. And now he's stuck around, we're stuck with him, which is fantastic. Lumi, he's a great guy. He lives in LA. That's kind of the big thing for us. We're based in LA. We need talent who are local to us.
Yeah.
So we'll work. Luby's graduated. He's cast with us. Kawa's now based in LA. And then when we need the extra talent, like we had the TI3 qualifiers, the Alienware Cup, that's where it's fantastic that people like Blitz and Purge are in LA as well. Or from time to time we bring in people like Merlini as well. So things just kind of fell together. And obviously this is the talent you see on screen. Obviously Kawa's not really on screen, but you hear about him. But there's so many more guys who complete the Beyond the Summit team who, without them, we wouldn't have production. We wouldn't have an overlay system. We have a guy who programmed everything from scratch, and we have some magicians, Sam and Sergio, who they make everything look pretty. And without that, having a studio is one thing, but having the production there to go with it is a completely different ballgame.
I'm going to touch on that in a second, but so then after the Kickstarter. Oh, wow. After that Kickstarter, you guys blew up. You guys had your studio. We did the LAN. We're not really going to discuss the LAN so much, but at the end of that LAN, did you think, like, hey, we could do real live events too? Especially with seeing how everything was organized and how, like, we had RIT help us with everything and we had EMS help us with everything. Because that's something that I left there like, wow, like it's actually really cool to run a live event. I didn't realize it's very stressful and it's very difficult. But with the right team with the right team and with the right group of guys, that still to me that was a lot of fun. And it was really impressive that we did what we did. And I remember leaving there like, wow, like that's actually really cool. I want to do that again. Did you have that impression after that LAN? Like, is Beyond the Summit planning on trying to do more like live events?
It's definitely a future goal of ours. I don't think it's like, okay, we're going to start planning we're not going to go start planning a live event today, but it's something where even like we did the Alienware Cup with DPM, we're like, if we could even like we're just brainstorming of spitballing ideas. We're like, man, we should have like a LAN finals. Like we could bring the team into our studio. Like these kind of ideas, we just throw them out and we're like, I wonder if we could actually do that. And which for us, most of the time, it's like we could. we don't shut down many ideas. It's more just a what would be involved with it. Make sure that it's actually feasible. But definitely, the whole LAN event feel is just something incredible, and that's where big the RT LAN. Even though it's amateur teams, it's just so cool. The atmosphere there, the teams really want to win. That's something which you see amateur teams playing on LAN. If you're in a final or a semi-final, the teams are not playing. I mean, they're playing because it's fun, but it's not messing around. They're playing to win every single time, even if it's an amateur tournament. There's a few teams always there who are just like, oh, I'm just going to have some fun, mess around. But if you get into the deep stage of the playoffs, it means a lot for these players and teams.
Yeah.
So,
and we even had 40 and 50 people spectating. That to me was like, what? And those are amateur teams. Like, that's when you know your product is hot, is when it doesn't matter who's playing. They just want to watch it.
Yeah. So, I mean, simply put, we want to do live events if possible, but it's probably not something it's not going to happen anytime this year. Next year's probably pushing it as well, but who knows? It just, like everything else we've done, all it takes is the pieces to fall in place. I mean, Kickstarter just kind of fell together, just somehow happened. I mean, beyond the summit itself, just somehow happened. So maybe the pieces fall correctly. We've been doing a live tournament somewhere early next year, but maybe not, and we don't do anything next year. So it's not something we're going to promise. It's not something we're heavily working towards. It's more just like, if it happens, it happens. We want it to, but it's no guarantees. Yeah,
like that was just a personal question, because I never actually have asked you that, and it just popped in my head like, hey man, like I wonder, like, was that event like, oh man, like I can do this? So going into the TI3 qualifiers, you guys got a lot of shit for bad production and stuff, and whether it was unjust or whatnot. You guys are my guys, so I always defended you. I was sort of biased, even when Bloomy was going through his little stuff with like Loda, and everybody feeling he was awfully critical. I obviously stayed out of it, but I definitely felt like you guys were getting the raw end of the deal there. How stressful was it going into the TI3 qualifiers? Like, be honest. Let's be transparent here. Like, how stressful for you was it?
It was just, I don't think once we'd seen everything, it was like, holy shit, we've actually done it. Like, we knew before we started our broadcast, we'd done it, and we were going to not so much. We knew we were going to impress people. We knew we'd actually done. We'd gone our studio. We'd done our production, and it was going to look good. It was the weeks leading up where we had this really short time. I remember Val. When they first contacted us, they're like, "Okay, we want you to host the Eastern qualifiers," and we're like, "Okay, great. Yeah, we'd love to do this. Our studio's actually coming from ready. I think that's what we got a lot of the negative feedback for, is that our Kickstarter completed, and then we kept casting stuff, but it wasn't like, obviously our studio. TI3 day one was the first time we ever used our studio for a live broadcast.
And tell people that you had to wait 30 days, correct? You had to wait to get your money, right?
Yeah, we had to wait till the end of we met the goal in 30 hours, but we don't get that money until the month was over. So it wasn't until the Kickstarter lasted a month. So that was a lot of people just didn't quite immediately read that or understand that. But from the day the Kickstarter ended to TI3 was, I think, about 7 or 8 weeks, maybe. I'm not sure, but I don't even think it was that. I think it was more like 6 weeks. But I'm not sure. But it's kind of in the back burner right now. But it was one of those things where people were just kind of fed up with waiting, and they just kept seeing us do these kind of average products, which is what we normally do, which we've been doing for a while from XSplit. They're like, where's this studio that we were going to deliver? So there was a lot of leading up to the qualifiers, like, can we actually meet these deadlines? Are we actually going to have everything there on time? What stuff is most important? What can we do out with? It was really this big, I guess, juggling still of finding out what's most important, what is actually you can do. We even had the GD studio saying, like, hey, look, if your guys' studio isn't ready, like, just fly out to freaking Sweden and we'll do it from our studio. And we're like, no. Well, actually, at first, when James Too Good first said, like, man, look, if you guys, if you guys need a backup plan, just fly to Sweden and produce it from the GD studio. Like, and it's like, and my first, I think that was one of those moments where it's like, okay, if everything goes to shit, we have a backup plan.
Yeah, you have a contingency. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it was one of those things where it kind of made me a lot more calm, and I think that actually helped.
Isn't it so awesome how nice those guys are, though? Like, they're actually genuine good people.
Yeah. Obviously, we get along great with the GD studio, and we owe so much to them as far as where we are today. So I don't have anything except nice words to say about them. Apart from James, he can be a little big sometimes, but I love him anyway.
Now, you weren't around for your Alienware Cup, but that was awesome. That was by far one of the but were you actually there? Because I thought you were already in Australia when that.
I've been in Australia the last 6 weeks or so.
I was surprised. That was honestly one of the best well-run online tournaments. That was awesome. The production was sick. The commentating was really funny. The Lumi rap was hilarious. Like how proud were you seeing the success and then having MasterCard sponsor you?
I was it was one of those things where even comparing like the Tier 3 qualifiers to the Alienware Cup, there was just such a big improvement on that, which I think is what I was most proud of, is that just from one tournament to the next, where we're doing something better that looks nicer. We had better overlays. We had just more tools, more features. I think also everyone was just more relaxed. That was one of the big things. Like at that day one of the qualifiers, I still remember doing our intro and just like fumbling over my words, thinking, "Holy shit! What am I saying?" I was nervous as hell. Like you say, how nervous was I? I wasn't actually nervous about the studio thing. I think I was more nervous about myself failing, like as a host or as a caster. I was just like, oh man, I was out of it. After we'd done that first intro, then every other day was fine. Like I was completely relaxed. It was just that day one. But yeah, Alienware Cup. I think the saddest thing for me is that I wasn't there. I was in Australia. I would have loved to have been there for it, but I got to sit home and watch some games. I obviously wasn't just relaxing. I actually was doing a lot of the admin work for it, editing all the VODs. So I got all the shitty jobs. But
all the hard stuff, though, all the stuff that needed to be done.
Editing YouTube VODs not difficult. Adding tags.
I was trying to give you some credit here, but you definitely just said psh, 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 psh. So
I got the short straw. But yeah, it was great. I was so happy. I broke open a bottle of whiskey after it was over and started drinking. But yeah, it was really cool seeing how successful the tournament is, how everyone loved it so much, and can't wait for season 2.
Yeah. Well, I think we're just gonna wrap up there. G, you know I love you and Lumi. You guys are amazing people. You guys do things the right way. I can't really express how thankful we are that you not only took time to do the show, but you guys were at the RIT land and all that stuff. I hope your fans enjoy this. I hope you enjoyed your time here. I know we sort of have had conversations like this before, but I personally felt that it would be good for other people to know you the way that I know you, and to get to have these conversations with you. Well, not have them with you, but at least hear your take on your own story and like the plight of Beyond the Summit, and now look at the rise of Beyond the Summit. Like, you guys are arguably right there with the good studio, and that is not an indictment of them. That's just how great you guys are. So I enjoyed it, brother. You're the man.
Thank you very much, Hector. It was great chatting anyways. I mean, it doesn't even really feel like I was in a show. It feels like we're just chatting.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, that's the idea. But Broham, I will see you at TI3. Take care of yourself. And I'll see you in about 2 weeks, homie. Have a good one.